few early birds in. Do you guys hear me? It's someone give me a thumbs up or something.
Hey, Mark. I'm online in case you want to test anything with me.
Yeah, I'm testing now. Is that coming up?
Yeah, I can see that. That's in presentation mode for your presentation.
Right. Good. Why isn't that come onto that screen really? Can you tell me that, Jen?
Pardon? Say that again?
Okay, is that still there?
Yes, I can still see it.
Okay, cool.
And if you want to see the chat or anything like that, can you see it
Send
on
me a
another
chat.
screen?
Send me a chat. Now, it all seems to come through on the, hang on, you send me something and oh yeah, I can see that there is a chat there. Where's that going? Oh, yeah. Just chat.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I don't want to be, so what I might do is
And it does look like it's bringing everybody in on mute. Did you have to unmute yourself when you joined?
I did.
Brilliant. Okay, cool.
I didn't take that as a sign that no one wanted to hear me, but it's all
right. Trust me, I think with this many registrations, everybody wants to hear you. Beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to test?
Hang on, just check. I don't think so. I think I'm.
And if you flick, have you tried flicking through any of your slides?
I'm just going to try that now. Why did that go? OTC. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That looks like it's working. Although, why did I suddenly have an echo when I spoke?
I'm not sure. Can you? Am I echoing?
You're not echoing.
No, you don't. You seem fine. Didn't come anything come from you.
Hi, Mark and Jen.
Hey, Jenny. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Mark and I are just running a couple of little tests. His presentation is fine. It looks like everyone's coming in on mute. I briefly had an echo in my own voice, but that seems to have gone now. So maybe somebody was just accidentally unmuted. So I'm wondering if we start having an issue with someone who's unmuted themselves, because I can't help you. I'm not going to be able to mute anyone, but I know that Jenny, you can mute all participants, but that would mute Mark as well, and he would have to unmute himself again.
So what I'll do is I will have to keep an eye on all of the people that are online, and I'll just have to manually go in and unmute anyone. Mute anyone who isn't muted. So
Okay.
it's going to be a bit of a juggling act, but yeah,
Yeah.
we'll work through it. It'll be fine.
Okay. The nice thing I see though is that if you go look at the participants list,
yep.
You can scroll down there and very quickly see who's got themselves unmuted.
Yeah.
So are you able to mute people from the participants list directly if you see someone's unmuted?
Yeah. Yep. But it's just a case of having to keep an eye on that. And with 450 links, I'm just going to be scrolling up and down the whole time. But yeah, it'll be fine.
Is there any way to add another organizer?
Not that I'm aware of. There can only be one person connect as the host.
Okay, we can look into that next time, and maybe we can see if there's a way to make two hosts so that I could help with muting people. But hopefully,
Oh, actually, Jen, I've just clicked on your name and it says to make co-host. So I am going to click that.
Okay.
Hang on, I'll just click it.
Co-host.
Okay, so
Okay.
we're both.
Oh, nice. I can mute people now. Haha. Yep.
Like you say, it's good because everybody does seem to be coming in muted. Fraser Thomas, if you're online there, I just see that you've got 2 links going. I'm not quite sure.
It could just be for audio. I know sometimes people do 2 links if they're struggling with audio.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. I can now go through the chat and I'll be able to mute people and switch off their cameras. Beautiful. Okay. Well, that looks like I'll be able to help you during the course of the chat to do that. I can also see the chat to help Mark with questions. So I'm going to run away quickly and I'll be back in 8 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else any of you need? Mark, do you need anything else from me in the next 8 minutes?
No, I think I'm right. I could send through a list of people who I don't want to take questions from because they're going to be hard ones. So
Sure, just pop that into our Teams chat and
that's right.
And do we know of any other Lens people who could help you with questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to be on.
Okay, I'll take a look through the chat once we've started and
yeah.
just see if there's anybody else I can pick on. Beautiful.
Yeah, don't know what the others. Yeah, I'm not sure whether there's anyone from the CSG or the OSG going to be on or not.
I think there might be a few. Okay, but I'm going to run away quick. I will be back in 7 minutes.
Cool. All right, we'll see you shortly.
Thanks, Jenny. That's awesome.
Mark, I might just quickly go and grab a coffee as well.
Sure.
So I'll just pop this on mute.
It's in. Yeah. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Hopefully this won't ruin it for you. Beautiful day in Wellington today. See everybody night. Nice and warm, finally.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on this webinar today that's being presented by Mark Goodin of LINZ. Most of you have joined us via the link that we sent through to you. So can you please ensure that you do have your sound and your camera off during this presentation, because we do have a lot of people online today. If you have any questions at all throughout the presentation, you can pop those into the chat box and Mark will answer those for you. So I'd now like to introduce our presenter. Mark is currently a senior cadastral surveyor in the property rights team at Land Information New Zealand. Prior to moving into the public sector, he worked for a multidisciplinary engineering consultancy based in Wellington. From his time in the private sector, he gained extensive practical experience in 3D data capture with specific expertise in carrying out cadastral surveys involving the definition of 3D property rights, restrictions, and responsibilities. Drawing on that experience, his current role at LINZ provides him with the opportunity to assist other surveyors as property rights become more complex and 3D cadastral concepts become more common. So I'd like to now hand you over to Mark.
Excellent. Thanks, Jenny. Right. Yes, as Jenny said, my name's Mark. Happy to see you all here. Really, the purpose of today's webinar is to bring to your attention the consolidated height limited guidance on the LINZ website. Previously, this information was spread across a number of pages, which was less than helpful. So we have now brought it into one page in an attempt to create a one-stop shop.
Hey, Kerry.
At LINZ, we're approving more CSDs subdividing quite intense townhouse developments into very small, very small, fee simple allotments, previously the domain of unit titles. And like their unit title counterparts, many of these townhouse developments have a 3D component to define rights, responsibilities, and of course restrictions. Some of you will be dealing with CSDs that have a height element to them on a regular basis, whereas for others it is a rare treat. So potentially quite a broad range of experience in the virtual room. The format of the session is going to be a brief intro, which is what I'm doing now, and then a step through the height limited guidance, covering off the main items and practical application of the guidance. I then want to work through some case studies to highlight the importance of clarity and unambiguity, because in the end of the day, the question you have to ask yourselves is can a layperson understand the 3D component of my 2D data set? I think it's quite important right at the moment, right at the start, to mention the approved data set examples in the guidance. Please note the disclaimer that they are not, this is not associated with height limited, this is all of them. The disclaimer that they are not necessarily compliant and intended to complement the guidelines. Surveyors are generally visual learners, I believe, so there's a tendency to go straight to the example plans, which is what I do myself, rather than read the text. So you really got to look at both of them. And one of the items that comes out of the Unit Titles Act is a comment that talks about essentially if an example and a provision to which it relates are inconsistent, the provision prevails. So, take that on board. And we do actually quite often get requisition responses like, that is what the example plans show. So we're just covering that off at the moment. So let's start at the beginning. What is a height limited boundary? Rule 12 of the Cadastral Survey Rules is probably the best starting point. For the purpose of this session, I'm only referring to Rule 12.2a, which is to do with mathematically described. And that really is something that is not well met as far as the rule, particularly for flat planes, for horizontal planes. The note, just as a starting point, the note, all height limited surfaces are horizontal planes would assist in meeting the rule. It's quite important, something, and I was just throwing in there that that ground level is not an appropriate description for a height limited boundary anymore. You will see plans that do have it on, but don't do it now. So a boundary defined by a reduced level is a height limited boundary. A parcel with a height limited boundary is now a height limited parcel, and a height limited parcel has a height limited appellation. So in the diagram, now that sounds pretty basic, doesn't it? But in the diagram, right there, and both primary parcels share a height limited boundary, but neither has an upper or lower limit. And I'll refer through the exercise as a webinar as a step. This is the step. And that might seem very basic to a lot of you, but we do get CSDs where height limits, because they involve a step and not a true upper or lower limit, are submitted without acknowledging them as height limited parcels. So we've got our step. All right. So let's start with a pretty significant part of the process, the vertical datum requirements. So all reduced levels in a survey must be in terms of a single official vertical datum. It's Rule 18. And as hopefully you're all aware, the official vertical datum is New Zealand Vertical Datum 2016. And that's the only one that can be used for cadastral surveys, with the exception of existing unit plans, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, put something in red there, so that must be important. Currently, there is no exemption under the cadastral rules that allow the reduced levels of an existing height limited primary parcel boundary to remain in terms of the datum, the source CSD that they're adopted from. So they must be in terms of NZVT 2016, unless dispensation is granted because the requirements is impractical or unreasonable. Then you'll say, but what about non-primary primary boundaries? Because quite often in those situations, nothing's changing, and rules 60 and 75 may be interpreted to allow the reduced levels of an existing height limited non-primary parcel boundary that are adopted or accepted as part of a new non-primary parcel to remain in terms of the datum of the source that they adopted from. However, all reduced levels must be in terms of a single datum, and the CSD must not create any new height limited boundary points. That's key there. So if you're going to create new easements, for example, with new height limited boundary points, then all bets are off and everything must be shown in terms of NZVT 2016. Now, I just mentioned there, of course, it's different from existing unit titles. Rule 62.1 does it. It requires that reduced levels in a unit development must be expressed in terms of the datum used for the previously deposited CSD for that unit development. And this may be an unofficial datum. However, I'll discuss a bit later on as well. There are situations there where that does have to change. So, across the question, how about a dispensation then? The Office of the Surveyor General have been receiving large numbers of requests seeking dispensation from the requirements to be in terms of NZVT 2016. And I'm just raising this. They have updated their dispensation guidance on the webpage to provide specific information about dispensation requests relating to this. It's relating to the official vertical datum situation. So on there, basically what they're saying is only be granted in exceptional circumstances. You need to, provide your reasoning and really provide that sort of information that will assist. So that's on the dispensation page, if you want to have a look at that. I said I'd raise it for the OSG, so I have. Okay, reference marks. There are different reference requirements for boundary points on primary parcels, unit parcels, and other non-primary parcels. A new height limited boundary point on a primary parcel must be referenced by a PRM, and the survey itself must include at least 3 PRMs, and 2 of them must have a reduced level. A new height limited boundary associated with an easement, lease, or covenant, or if it can coincide with an accepted boundary, does not require a PRM. Now, we're talking PRMs, we're not talking BCMs at the moment, we're talking PRMs. And a new height limited boundary point on a unit parcel, and remember we're talking RLs, not permanent structure boundaries, must be referenced to a PRM. That's a Rule 61. This requirement also applies to unit redevelopment. So if you're going to retain RLs as your vertical boundary definition, I mean, you can change to PSBs if it makes it easier, but if you are going to retain your height limited boundaries, and as a result of a redevelopment, you do create new height limited boundaries, then you need to meet the rules. You need to retain the datum, but you need to meet these rules. And the survey must include 2 PRMs with reduced levels, and any reduced levels for PRMs need to be on a survey diagram. That's just one of those requirements. And as far as, you get the situation that this is if you are providing this information, they all need to meet the applicable vertical accuracy standards in Rule 21, and they all must be within the applicable distance of PRM for various, either under Rule 32 or Rule 61. Now, I just highlighted red. It's not so important, this one, but we do see situations where RLs are shown against non-boundary marks, which are not PRMs. And really, the intent of the PRM, obviously, is to show that you as the surveyor have made the assessment that your mark is going to has a reasonable expectation that your mark will last 50 years. So you've made that call, and other marks, you're not saying you're going to have an expectancy. So they do have to be shown against a PRM. So you may get requisitions if they're shown just against a normal non-boundary mark. Vertical control marks, at least one VCM must be included, and it's highlighted that for a reason, in a height limited CSD. VCMs are, hopefully you're aware, are existing survey marks which have been assigned a height in terms of NZVD 2016 with an land line order of 3V or better. And the key word there is assigned, because a height converted to NZVD 2016 using the LINS conversion tool is not acceptable as your VCM. I mean, you can use the converter tool in other situations, but not as your VCM. It has to have an assigned height. Now, in the existing unit title situation, so where there are new heights, if the CSD is in terms of unofficial datum, then one or more of your vertical control marks must be included, then one or more. And then you have to, reading the rule, it's not just obvious, well, if you read it carefully it is, but sometimes if you glance over it, you do need to effectively, while you're retaining your original unit plan datum, you do have to put a height from that in terms of that datum on your VCM, and that is the height that's shown on the VCM, not an NZV 2016, but a site. So you're going to have to do some. You're going to have to take the transfer height back onto that mark, and not the normal process of transferring the height onto site. I just thought, I think we did raise, we'll have questions later on, that's fine. You often see in the term VCM must be included. I just wanted to explain that one. It is there for a reason, but sometimes people aren't quite sure of what's going on there. So included means that it does not have to be captured, spatially captured, but it's detailed. But if you haven't done that, its details must be included in the CSD. So what guidance is saying is you need to provide the reduced level in terms of the mark name of the VCM and its geodetic code, the reduced level of the VCM, the applicable vertical datum. I just highlight the fact, please do not forget Rule 71 as far as field information. You can't just put that information on your plan, because your survey needs to be in terms of that VCM. So you need to have at least visited that VCM to prove that it meets the accuracy, still there for a start. So VCMs should only be old marks, and you will need to provide field information for that mark. which I'll also just comment a little bit on further on. There's a lot of further going on, isn't there? Anyway, so we talked about parcel appellations, really important. A lot of people forget about this or don't think about it or whatever. So where it is a height limited parcel, it must have a height limited prefix. That's the rule, and that is that identifies it as having that height limited aspect to it. So for not just for surveyors, but for the owners, lawyers, whatever. But obviously not for unit titles. So unit titles don't get the for units don't get the height limited principal unit. No, so they just retain their own principal unit, accessory unit, etc., etc. So the full appellation should be included in the data set description, as per this example. Then we just have a nice. That's a really good example. Lots, we would break it up, lots 1 and 2 and 5, and then height limited lots 3 and 4. So please do that. Now the appellation can be abbreviated to HL on plan graphics normally, and as long as it's unique and it's obvious that it applies to it. And if you're going to try and keep it consistent throughout the CSD, whatever you've done. And supporting documents, so you get the situation of referring to in a schedule memorandum. It should be HL lot 3, for example, in this example. Okay, parcel area is another one that catches a few people out. So where a parcel shape changes at different elevations, the area of the parcel must be calculated from the widest extent of the parcel when vertically projected onto a horizontal plane. Just reading that out. Different than old school, and can catch a few people out. So you're always, if it is a true situation, then you're going to get your height limited parcel areas will generally exceed the area of the extinguished parcel due to the overlaps. And this is why you're going to receive a C660 warning in your pre-val. And as per any relevant pre-val warning, you just need to report on that. Just saying that it's subject due to the height limited parcels. Hopefully, that's the only reason. Where exists, we do get requisitions, and normally it's because people have only looked at it from a ground level perspective, from the spatial capture. And what I'm suggesting here is that the simple remedy for this is to attach a calculation sheet showing your showing lot closes. Not everyone does. So you might say, "Oh, I do that," but not everyone does. And so the advantages of this is twofold. Firstly, it reduces plan checking time. So the CRSs, or used to be called PRAs, don't need to run the calcs themselves, and that saves time. And secondly, and probably more importantly from a QA perspective, it identifies to you as the surveyor that all of the necessary boundary dimensions, which are required under Rule 105.1a, are clearly shown and can be interpreted. Now, this is a really key point, and I do hammer it a little bit as we're going through. Just have a look at Rule 105.1a when you finish the seminar, when you finish the webinar. So if you can't identify the full extent from the information on your plan, then who can? So it's really good QA. So if anything, take from today's webinar, look, that's one of them. Just provide those checks. Make sure you've done your own. Do your spatial check, your ground floor spatial check, and your upper level spatial checks as appropriate. Okay, so these are just hopefully that's coming through clearly enough. But that's the diagram from the guidance, and the green shaded area is that the rogue area that gets missed. Now, as I mentioned, old school, and I personally don't have a problem with showing it, is that some people will show different heights per the other level. So the spatial capture, which is the one you'll show, which is even though it's on the spatial capture on the ground floor, it will be the full area. But if you want to provide other heights, other areas at different levels. You can put it in user added text. Just make sure it's correct. We're not going to check it. Well, if we do check it and we find it's wrong, we will requisition you, but because it's on a CSD. But just make sure that it's not required, but you can get requisition for it. So just make sure it's right, please. Okay, schedule memorandum. Upper and lower limits can be added to the schedule memorandum. There's no issues there. That may change in the future, but we're just testing that one at the moment. The vertical step I talked about in a parcel is not considered to be an upper or lower limit. So if a parcel doesn't have an upper or lower limit, do not include it in the schedule. Just leave it blank. Don't even bring in the option of putting a limit on there. If that would be helpful, because it will get requisitioned if it's not the true limit. And as I say, step, don't apply it. Now, the other thing that with schedule memorandums that does catch people out is the vertical extent of height limited parcels need to be depicted in the title diagram. That's Rule 97, if you want to take a note of the rules. Because the schedule memorandum does not form part of the title diagram, that means that including an RL only in the schedule memorandum as the only reference does not satisfy that requirement, and you will get pinged on it. You won't get told, if it's correct, you won't get told to take it off the schedule, but you will need to add it somewhere on the plan face. Okay, so reporting, it's just like any. Reporting on the vertical component of a CSD is typically not well done. But when you think about it, it is just as important as horizontal. So if you're prepared to put effort into horizontal, think about the vertical. And that's we want to know how you are meeting accuracy tolerances, because it's not just it's you guys. Everyone else is going to use this, going over your plan. Another subsequent surveyor needs to be confident. So the survey must include details about the basis for determining the origin. And really, the report should describe how the reduced levels were established and confirmed. Then you might be coming off your base off your building, and doing everything by GNSS, and you will then go and pick up your VCM as well, and plus another to check your heights, and hopefully another one, bit of redundancy at least. And then so just that information is really helpful for everybody. Shows how good your levels are. You don't know whether that mark, so basically you got just good survey practice, which which some of us older surveyors still hang our hats on. The other marks that have been used for checking should be detailed, and also a description of how you've on what method you've used. Have you brought it in by GIPS? Have you brought it in by leveling from marks? Have you total station, vertical angles, or whatever? And so that we can see that you have achieved the accuracy that we're wanting, that you want, basically. And as I say, the next surveyor needs to be able to know how good those levels are. And so then we move on to field information. I mean, it's all still good field information that needs to be included. And so if you have run a booked level using a level, people still do that. Just scan those sheets, scan your leveling book sheets or whatever. But with GIPS, we need to, like anything, it's a bit easier. All the information's there as long as we're seeing the quality of data that we're requesting, satellites, PDOT, VDOT, et cetera. See whether it was a good time of the day for using that work, and whether there was any issues with, doing a checks, any multipathing going on. Hopefully somebody later on can work out, hang on, this is why this is not working. All right, so we're kind of moving through things, but this is just basically following the guidance, as I say. So this is getting into a bit more of the spatial capture requirements, and this comes under the lodgement standard, and for primary parcels under lodgement standard 4.4. Now, what it talks about is spatially, substantially at ground level, and that is basically being interpreted as having a ground level footprint of some sort, of some description. I don't know if you've ever tried to capture a combination of a ground level and first level, trying to use primary and strata. It's just a nightmare. So we basically just, if it's got a ground level footprint, capture of your topology, primary parcel layer. Parcels immediately above or below must be captured in strata. And I've just added that unless an exemption from the standard is granted. Now, exemptions are different from dispensations. Exemptions come from the lodgement standard. Just throw that out there. And anything above those levels should be defined on plan graphics. So hopefully that's clear. Now, this is a diagram that's in the guidance that we spent a little time trying to get right. It still confuses a few people. But basically, it's showing that the height limited lots 1, 2, and 3 effectively have a ground floor footprint. Now, I know you're going to say lot 2 doesn't, but it does. Trust me. So they get captured in your spatial capture as your spatial capture layer, primary parcel layer. Now, either lots 9 and 10 are either captured in the strata topology layer or 4 and 5. So let's say we captured 9 and 10, the strata topology layer. But because you can see that height limited lot 1 has that darker blue capture, it doesn't get captured in the strata layer at all. It just retains in there. And what will happen is all the other information would be shown in plan graphics. Okay, so even so lots 11 and 12 would be in plan graphics, and 4 and 8 would be in plan graphics, etc., etc. But if we come back to the original slide and we come back to my unless an exemption from the standard is granted. Now, I do get in a little bit of trouble referring to this because it's kind of, and I have tried to convince a few others. In my opinion, capturing those parcels immediately above the spatial capture in strata doesn't really add a lot, especially when, for example, you've got a 10-story building, ground level captured, ground level, levels 1 to 10 captured, or level 1 captured at strata, and level 10, 2 to 10 captured as plan graphics. You know, what is the advantage of capturing level 1 at strata? Now, that's a different story for a tunnel or a bridge, for example. Now, the guys working on CRL up in Auckland, you know, having that tunnel captured in the strata layer, really, really good, because you can click on it and people can actually see how that strata connects up, bang, bang, bang. Whereas in the building situation, it doesn't really add a lot, and in fact, it actually just causes confusion. So I would grant you an exemption to just to capture the ground floor and then everything else on plan graphics. And if you get a requisition, tell them to come see me. So we're looking at non-primary parcels, the lodgement standard again. There's similar requirements, but in this situation, you have the secondary layer, tertiary layer type arrangement, and they should be used. So you've got to think about this. You got, use it, but don't confuse this. Of course, this aspect. This is height limited non-primary parcels. Don't get too confused with your standard, right of way and water easement at ground level. They're going to be crossing, and the use of tertiary and secondary is It's in the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's to allow these parcels to cross, because land and line doesn't allow it, but or causes problems for it. And with new land and line in the future, once we've got some more enhancements, that may be a thing in the past. But just make sure that you are capturing, and then once you get the secondary, tertiary, then you go into plan graphic again. So if you have you're more likely to have the three components in the non-primary scenario. Now, unit title, company lease or cross-lease parcels do not need to be spatially captured as far as that type of arrangement is concerned. So anyway, I'll just throw that out there. All right. So that's sort of the obvious big ticket items in the guidance. What I was going to do now is just do a little bit of a practical application and some things that I really like to push, and really just diagram presentation, really the plan graphic aspect of it. How is a 3D element shown in 2D so that it's clear and unambiguous, and importantly can be understood by the layperson. Sometimes we get responses to requisitions stating, other surveyors can work this out. And my retort to that really is that it's not about other surveyors or even LINs. It's about the owner, your client. Can they understand it? Can future owners understand it? Work it out on their own without having to come back to you guys. Now that may cost you a bit of money, but let's be fair. So there really is no one method to pick height limited boundaries, and I suppose that's actually why we see so many issues. So this is just one interpretation. Hopefully it's clear to you, but so what I'm providing is just a very basic toolkit to have a think about these. So what we've talked about, that spatial capture, so that's fine. Represent parcel footprints at ground level, you're all into that. And then basically plan graphics showing slices at appropriate RLs above or below that ground level view. Now, that's picking that appropriate level is one of the keys, and putting a decent heading on it to show that this is RL. Ground, even on the spatial capture, you might have a user added text, just a heading down the bottom saying level RL or RL 15.30 and below, and then the next plan graphic may be RL 15.30 and above. Now you're always going to argue about these plans. We don't want to do 15.3 and then 15.300001. We know, everyone knows what it means. 15.3 up and down. And think about that slice. Think about what is appearing on that slice and above. Think about the easements that don't have height limits on them. They are going to show up on all your plan graphics. Put them on, please. And things like that. So good clear cross sections, really important. My personal preference is cross sections rather than elevations. Elevations can cause some real problems, whereas cross sections put in a good place, can cover a lot of things and really does show what's happening. I also put in the long sections. I mean, these are just cross sections the other way, but sometimes if you have multiple changes in a floor, just provide a long section. Just think of it as a long section. You can just put it. You just don't have to label it as a long section. You can label it as a section. But just that combination of cross sections one way and long sections the other sometimes is very important. Now, in the cross-section, long sections situation scenario, and I'll talk about this a bit later as well, is, if you are showing a building detail, then that building detail needs to be clear that it's not an easement. Do not confuse it with an easement. So, once again, you've got to think of Joe Punter looking at the old plan. Can they work it out? So you're going to have to look at different line styles and really think about, does this look clear, or does it look like a whole lot of non-primary parcel lines all over the thing? And you might find that your plan graphic is clear, but once it gets scanned, or you may even have colours. And once it gets scanned, they all grey out and it comes through. So just think about that. And the other one, of course, is obviously clear notes or annotations. A lot of guys and girls spend a lot of time getting some very good annotations. Some people don't, but most people do. But so when you've put it in, before you submit the plan, have a read and say, oh, hang on, that didn't quite make sense, or whatever. So we have this. So we have the depiction of the vertical extents on the diagram. Where it is a simple horizontal plane, depiction can be as straightforward as the annotation on the plan face. And in this situation, we've got a message down the bottom, pretty clear. Now, if that wasn't there, then, and it was in the schedule, then, as I've said, you'd have to put something on the plan face. You're not going to go with just a simple note like that. You'd be then getting into cross sections and putting cross sections in. So you don't have to put a cross section. You can just cover it. If it's a simple plane, horizontal plane like this, you can get away with a note. In this particular example, I probably would have preferred to have something like easement CNF limited to horizontal planes at a lower height of 8.90 NZVD 26, something like that. Just because it is that situation where you do show a cross section for your showing the height, doesn't necessarily mean that it is only a horizontal plane. Most people would probably say yes, it does, but I'm just saying you can remove that potential ambiguity by making it pretty damn clear. Most people who have got complicated surfaces probably take more time in it, which is fine, which is good. But you just have to think about that one as well. Just put it into your toolkit. So this is a slightly more complicated example. We have a step in the boundary at RL 189.80, and to identify the shift in the boundary of two plan views, all good, with the different plan views well labelled. So we've got a couple of labels there, pretty good. And they've also provided a cross section, which is great. The occupation detail is a solid line and is not ideal. I've just talked about that. But in this case, it didn't really cause too many problems. Still have an issue with maybe area K, but the CRS who looked at the sums thought it was okay. But just something to think about. The important thing that this plan does well, it clearly shows the boundary bearings and distances and where they are at different heights. So we've got the two different heights, and as I say, Rule 105.1 A requires all bearings and distances of every right line boundary to be shown. And so in this case, on the upper level, those distances are different. So this person can go around their different level, work out the areas, work out what they own, blah, blah, blah. What I particularly like about this one is the inclusion of common point numbers between the two views. Now, I've kind of spliced these two views from one page to another, and so it's kind of a situation where there are some common views on the other side. So someone can actually look at the two graphics and okay, that matches them, and that's really important on a complicated arrangement. Probably, I don't want to be too critical, but in the situation, there are two areas shown. Probably in the same font. I can't remember whether this was exactly what happened. There must be a height limit somewhere. The actual full height limit's the 303. So the 301 possibly could have been shown in italics. This is the plan graphic, so you've got pretty much control of what you're doing. Okay, so area, this is a section non-primary. Area H is party wall. It sits over area Y, being a right of way. Quite a common scenario, becoming more common with these townhouse developments. In this situation, would ideally be supported with an appropriate cross section, because from this plan view, it's not obvious this arrangement must also be reflected in parcel captured as far as tertiary, secondary, etc. as height limit AY sits under height limit area H, AY should be the secondary layer, H and tertiary layer. This will then comply with the lodgement standard. However, while it may be clear in the parcel capture, it needs to be clear on the diagrams, because you've got to think about these things. I mean, at the moment, a lot of owners, a lot of lawyers don't have spatial land online licenses, or don't know how to use them, or whatever. And more the lawyers then. So, as we talked about showing building occupation features. You know, look at the situation. Do EY and FY have lower limits, sloping lower limits? Now, I know it talks about ground level, but is that considered a lower limit? So, if you're going to add that sort of detail, just suggesting that you just mix up the line styles to remove the ambiguity with non-primary parcels. Also, with cross-section indicators on plans, you know, they're showing where the section lines are. You know, putting a full section line across a townhouse development with myriad of easements, solid line, just makes it all confusing. So either think about cutting the line and just showing it either side, or if you're going to show it all the way across, just show a line style that isn't going to confuse with the lines you have to capture at a certain type. You know, with plan graphics, you do have a lot more choice in your line style. The no land on lines restricted, but plan graphics really isn't any excuse. And this is just a clear example. You know, pretty clear what's going on there. Car park, blah, blah, blah. Easements are all good. Fine. Another situation, a couple of issues that Steve do think through. In this one here, you would have picked up. I know because you've been doing this webinar, that height limit, that lot 1 should have been height limited lot 1. We can see, if you look at it closer, it's not quite clear because I put a red line through there, but height limited lot 1 goes underneath height limited lot 6. Would have just been, once again, helpful to have that label underneath it as well. Just thinking about those kind of things. Now, primary parcel boundary can't be a PSB. So where you have the, this is not quite a high limit issue, but you know, where you have the common boundary in the situation, it says height limit lot 1 boundary is not the face of the wall, because it's a right line. We know it's a right line. So it would have just been better to, you could put something like boundary coincides with face of wall. Now, coincide for a lot of other CSDs is quite a good term. It means that it sits above that. It's the same line, but it sits above it. Is not trying to replicate it. You'll see that in unit plans. But so coincide, think about, pop that one back in your bank that you can use. Then, you know, things like boundary coincides with face of wall, you know, just to clarify that, because there will be a right line boundary, and once again, you're not allowed the combination of right line and PSB. Now, so I've just noticed time is ticking away, so I better get onto it. Case study 1, and before we start this, this is not intended, some of these examples are not intended, hopefully people can't identify them, it's not intended to embarrass anyone. If you do recognise a plan, kind of take it as that you're helping educate your fellow professionals, and hopefully we learn something and moving on. These just happen to be examples that have come across my desk at some stage. These aren't complicated examples, but the idea, what I'm trying to do here is, you know, you get guys working on CRL or big buildings or whatever, and these will be quite simple. But the idea of the examples is that they form, you start, that's building blocks, and you through to whatever complication you want. Now, different story with complex mathematical surfaces. That's another story, and you're going to, so my advice is to try and avoid those as much as possible. But if you can't, then you're really just going to have to make it as clear as thing, and then give Tony Nicol a call. So this example is a lot townhouse development with quite a few easements. This is just a small part of it. unfortunately, when I put this together, I should have used more primary parcel boundary, but this is a situation where we probably get more requisitions from non-primary, so it does make sense because they get more fiddly. So just one small part of the development, and there was a cross section provided, and so I've kind of just estimated where the cross section's taken. That's the cross section. So it's all good, shows heights, blah, blah, blah. There's questions about the dashed line, what does that actually represent? Does height limited area SS have a lower limit? You could argue it's not obvious or it is obvious, but, that's once you get into some sort of ambiguity, then you should make it clear. But most importantly, this correctly shows that PP sits above BB, which sits above SS, and, well, WW is another question. So this generates a 3-layer scenario, and which may or may not get resolved later on, but basically something to consider. And so it was quite a complicated little number, the 3 layers there. And so was the relationship of the overlaps clear in the plan view? And in combination with the cross section, you could argue that it was. And this is why good cross section is important. But let's have a look at what parcel capture actually showed. So parcel capture showed area SS is that shape there. So area SS runs under area BB. So that was correct. Area BB was in the tertiary layer, looked fine. And then PP came over the top. And the cross-section clearly shows that PP sits above BB, but this capture shows that PP goes around BB. And so, and that's kind of the scenario where you're trying to create 2 tertiary, you kind of have tertiary over tertiary. So just something, so this particular plan, that kind of piqued my interest at the time. And I said, well, hang on, this is not quite right. So we set it back on requisition. And what actually happens now is that PP was no longer spatially captured. Okay. And now it's shown on a plan graphic. And it shows the full extent of PP, fully dimensioned, sitting up above plan view. There is PP at RL 42.22 and above. Good clear heading there. And this particular one was also included a number of common marks that relate from this plan view to the spatial plan view. So really, really good. On the P sheets, that was made clearer that BB sits above SS with that note there. So that's pretty clear. And in the cross section, for example, the dotted line was annotated. There was the removal of the lower limit so SS obviously no longer has a lower limit. And then so we've got the secondary layer, got the tertiary layer, and no topology, captures no topology. So you got to remember that I just had one the other day where somebody didn't capture their aspatial parcels correctly. So just be aware of that. Now you could argue that that BB, I mean that layer could be different. It could be BB secondary layer, P tertiary layer, and the lower one SS as a plan graphic, depending on your interpretation of ground level. But the way that was done was fine. And just trying to see I'm taking a bit longer. I just don't want any questions. So the alternative to that notation on the previous slide was you could show so cross sections like that. It shows that G for example goes that full extent, and X, so that's showing a combination, and then providing a cross section, and you can see that that easement there sits above that easement there, you know. So just ways of doing. Just think about how you're doing these things. Got a good clean cross section like that, building line pretty clear, easements fine. You can, you know, in the situation, the plan graphics, you probably should have height limited X, height limited W, etc. Because they are plan graphics. You CAD, so you can do that. We know that on Land Online you can't. And I talked about consistency, but in this situation, you probably should have height limited, just HL. They don't have to put height limited. And so the more complex easement of CSD is, the more plan views, sections, etc. is really the kind of what I'm saying. But you know, you can use typical diagrams if they are clear and appropriate, and you can do them properly. This is an example of one. You know, it's pretty clear. So why not? You know, if you can get away with doing that in this situation, probably reference to a horizontal planes. Again, would have been helpful. Case study 2. So we have spatial capture with a cross section, and the cross section clearly shows it's quite an interesting cutout of some spouting, and that's fine. But the question was, in this example, what is the horizontal extent of that key there? And that wasn't actually provided. So we asked for a and just providing that dimension. Can't even read it in the glasses. 0.29, is it 20? That's not enough to prove that to demonstrate Rule 105. Okay, so we get the situation. There was a plan graphic was added, which shows the extent at the upper level, and it shows, there's a good heading there, shows that it was between these RLs, it was about, etc., etc. So they can now work out the because that will impact the area of height limited lot 7. Actually, I noticed we didn't get them to change height limited lot 6, height limited lot 7, but you know, some things do slip through. Third case study was an interesting one. Had this cross section, showed various non-primary parcels, quite a complicated little system and not easy to represent, but they did a good job here. Again, height limited lot 1, height limited lot 2 should have been the appellations. Really plan graphic, no reason why you can't put that on there. They provided that cross section was approximately through there. And that was the plan graphic showing that. Now, what doesn't actually show, this is good heading, level above 19.5. Could have probably been level above RL 19.5, would have been more accurate. But you know, we can live with that. But so we got area J shown there, we've got area C there. But where was I? And so if you remember correctly, that I was sitting underneath there. And so there was actually no horizontal definition of I in that scenario. And that's kind of what I said, if you do your own calc sheets of each parcel at different levels, then that may have been picked up. So I didn't do that. So that's basically the scenario showing that Jana, but no I. And so post-requisition, they provided another view which showed I dimensioned, showed the relationship with C, because C comes up behind it and goes higher than it, type of thing. So a good result really all around. Fourth one, look, getting to the end. Yeah, this one here, most of the focus has been on ones that had little challenges. This one here was quite a simple one, but it's again, the building blocks, concepts are the same. So this is what's captured at Spatial, and then the plan graphic with the boundary dimensions at the upper level. You know, and then we have few common mark names on that from each level, so people can associate them. Don't need them all, just kind of the relevant ones. And quite often some people just show parts of the parcel, but as long as you've got those common mark names, it's really quite helpful. The occupation detail, occupation on the cross section was the line style was all good, didn't conflict. You can see the difference there. Section line shown there. Now that in that situation, yes, it is a solid line with a couple of arrows, but it doesn't. There's no way that's going to get confused with an underlying parcel boundary or anything, so it's fine. But our points, and then and we've got and there was a descriptor on that plan. You don't want to just leave it as the plan. You want to provide a descriptor at what level you are showing it. And typically, showing it as level 1, ground level 1, can work. But if you are basing it on an RL, you have that information, then actually working off that RL is a lot is probably a lot better. You can put them both in if you want, but as long as they work. And I believe that, getting pretty close to time, is me. So if someone does have a quick question, I think probably if you do have some pretty detailed questions, maybe the idea of put them in the chat, and then I'll try and get back to you. But if anybody, we've got 30 new messages, it'll be interesting.
Hey, Mark, thank you for that. That was fantastic. I see we have 3 minutes left. So what I may do is just read you maybe 1 or 2 of the questions from the chat that people have already asked you. And then the rest of the questions we can get you to answer separately, and we can send it out with the video recording. Does that work for you?
I think that's better. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. The first question, Michael asked, can the survey diagram be a sketch lodged as a plan graphic?
Well, the survey diagram is what is defined in the rules. So it's whatever's in from part. So if it requires no. I mean, if you're doing even a parcels without survey information, you're going to have capture of some sort. So you don't need necessarily an S-chip, you need a T-chip. So basically, no.
Okay. Ching Shi has asked us, so when a subdivision plan creates height limited easements intersected with primary boundaries, PRMs with reduced levels are not required, ?
Hang on, so there's new height limited easements.
So Ching Shi has said, when a subdivision plan creates height limited easements intersected with primary boundaries, PRMs with reduced levels are not required, ?
That's right. As long as the primary parcels aren't creating any issue, because as soon as you have a new primary parcel boundary, of course you've got PRMs required, not with reduced levels, but if it's just an easement only plan, then no, you don't need PRMs. But if you do have primary parcels as well, then you're going to need PRMs anyway, and you're going to need 3 of them.
Awesome. I'll try hit one more question. I see that Mike Morris has answered a lot of questions for us in the chat as well, which is great.
Good man.
Spencer Holmes has asked, in your step example, so this was quite earlier on in the presentation, you had area A shown. Was this intended to be height limited, or does the fact that the primary parcel is height limited automatically apply to the secondary parcel?
Sorry, I'll just find my little diagram. Can't remember where A was.
That's all right.
Can you find it? Yeah, within that situation, yes, area A will be height limited.
Cool. I see we've hit 2 o'clock. I can see there's some additional questions in the chat, but I think to respect everybody's time, I'm going to wrap up questions there. Thank you so much to everyone who's put questions in the chat and joined us today. We've had a fantastic turnout and we really appreciate it. Please email cadastral@surveyspatialnz.org if you have more questions or have any ideas for topics or any feedback for Mark. But any of the questions we haven't gotten to yet, I will chat to Mark and make sure we get those questions answered and put them out with the recording. So I think that's us from the cadastral stream, but I'll give Jenny and Mark a chance to close off as well.
Right. So thank you so much to all of our members for joining us on this presentation, and also a huge thanks to Mark for your time and also for a fantastic presentation. As Genevieve has advised, we will ensure that a recording of this webinar along with questions is uploaded to the training on demand section of the Survey and Spatial website, and that will be available by the end of this week. So did you have anything further you'd like to add, Mark?
Oh, just thanks for everyone for listening. Hopefully it was worthwhile for you. Some of you, hopefully it wasn't the second time around. But look, if you do have queries, I'll try and answer them. But otherwise, look, we're happy to take direct phone calls for these kind of things. We're looking at first time compliance. So we're getting some good queries through requests for things that people just need to clarify for different things, which is really helpful. But if you want to give us a call, or one of the I shouldn't volunteer all of the cadastral survey group, should I? But I probably will. So for queries, that we're happy to make we like talking to you and getting first time compliance. So would be really good. So thanks very much for attending. I think I don't know what the numbers were, but I think it's pretty good at some stage. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.